Welcome to Mo's Market Pulse. I'm your host, Sara Mokaram, founder of Mo Digital Solutions, where we help businesses hit their revenue goals and thrive. On this podcast, we talk with industry leaders about their business, market trends, growth strategies, and what's ahead. Today, we are joined by Dan Thomson, founder and CEO of Sensay. I'm excited to dig into your story, Dan, and learn more about what you're building with Sensay. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Very excited.
To get started, I'd just love to set the stage for our listeners. Can you walk us through your journey leading up to Sensei and what moments in your personal or professional life made you realize there was a need and just to preserve and replicate human knowledge through AI?
Yeah, sure. Very happy to. So my background is a bit of a mixed bag. I studied philosophy and then went on to do an MBA, and had a mixed bag of career as well. I worked a tiny touch in finance, but the vast majority of my early years were actually starting and building restaurants and bars and health food cafes and other hospitality businesses. But some of the most important parts of my life that predated Sensei and led up to actually creating this technology. One was a very, very personal accident that I had where I had actually bumped my head so hard that I got a severe concussion that caused me to actually lose my memory for about 48 hours. And this was when I was about, I think, 18 or 19. It was super young. And it was really tough because going through that as an experience where it's like having the words on the tip of your tongue, but having like memories on the tip of your brain. You really struggle just to quite reach them, and it's a really terrifying thing to go through when you realize that everything that you have, your memories, your stories, everything that we are, our knowledge is can be so fleeting just from a knock on the head. And so that was one of the most instrumental parts of my life that really sort of put me down this path. And I was already studying philosophy at the time, and I found a lot of interest around the philosophy of identity and existentialism, which really kind of fed into this idea of what makes us as individuals. And that kind of bled through in the back of my mind, even while I was running these hospitality businesses, because just shortly after I moved from London down to Spain, I found myself like really kind of struggling with my place in the universe. And I ended up scribbling some notes down, and that actually evolved into an entire book. I call it a quarter life crisis and some kind of existential search for meaning in my life. And where I ended up was realizing that, obviously our memories and our stories are fleeting. And when we're gone, they die out after a couple of generations when people forget about us, and how different civilizations and people kind of fight against that through either religion or stories or autobiographies, through success, through fame. But we as a generation are extremely lucky to live in a world where, and it kind of goes against the sort of common idea that, our data is private and we should try and preserve privacy, but not record ourselves too much. But I think that we live in this golden age of data recording, of the ability to capture ourselves in photos, videos, our voice chats, conversations. We have emails, we have messages with our friends, our families, our loved ones. And that data, when combined with a sufficiently advanced AI, could go on after we've finished our time on this planet to actually interact with future generations to come. So this book, this scribble, this personal crisis turned into a real thought process around creating a form of digital immortality for ourselves that means that, we will never be forgotten again. Some version of us will continue to exist and interact with people after we're gone. And that kind of sat back quietly while I was, still building a restaurant chain, right up until the explosion in AI a couple of years ago when, AI has been around for a long time, obviously, but it really hit the public perception and also a perceived quality level where I realized that now was the time to start building this technology in this book I'd have written, this idea, this vision of how we can have an extension of ourselves, so that if one day I get another knock on my head, one day something happens to me, on my travels, maybe will be a version of me that people can interact with, they can talk to, and they can learn from as an extension of me, as if I were still around. And that's basically what drove me to start building Sensei, and what our long-term goal is. It's to create a version of me that can coexist with me and continue to exist long after I'm gone.
Wow, that's so fascinating and such an unique experience, really, to have, lost your memory for that period of time. So, looking at the company today, how would you describe the Sensei's core product and how it works and the value it brings to the users?
Yeah. So obviously, the idea of creating virtual humans and digital immortality is quite a big, lofty goal. So we're not going to get there overnight by just going straight for that, because I mean, there's a lot of elements that go into creating something like that. So we have stepping stones to get there, and it was more of a roadmap, kind of coming back from that as a concept. So where we're at now as a business is that we actually have this ability to capture some of that knowledge, some of that personality, and replicate it as a version of an individual. Obviously, the knowledge and memories are limited to what it's been trained on, and some of the aspects around wisdom and personality, intuition, emotion, and some of the other more human elements are still a work in progress. But right now, anyone can go to our website. They can start creating what we call a replica of themselves, essentially an AI agent of themselves that's hyper personalized, that can react as if it's you. This is used as either a chatbot, as a, let's say, like a website widget for your website to interact with your customers, your clients, or potential just visitors for your website, as a sales bot or as a customer service bot. So this could be, it doesn't have to be like a CEO, or it could be a brand ambassador. It could also be an abstract mascot for your business, or it could even just be something like your best salesperson at there as a website widget to welcome people in a way that's not as generic as any of the other chatbots you see out there. It has personality. You can ask it personal questions. You can ask it about itself, not just, and if it's trained to be a sales bot, then it will naturally bring the conversation back around sales, but in a way that a real life salesperson would be able to talk about themselves and build a relationship. And so, we have this line about saying that we're putting the humanity back into AI, but it does feel like that sometimes. So right now, we have chat bots and chat widgets that are available as website widgets, as Telegram bots, Discord bots, WhatsApp bots, as personal assistants, so they can help you with your social media posting and your email drafting. So they're these essentially business tools that are just a very small step on the long path to creating fully autonomous virtual humans.
What type of clients or use cases are getting the most traction right now? Are there specific, individuals or businesses that are really seeing value currently?
Yeah, we're seeing a huge amount of individual entrepreneurs, freelancers, as well as SMEs, specifically around mentoring, coaching, anything to do with education, and also a lot of interest around manufacturing, retail, telecom as well. So having a much more intimate relationship where typically customers or website visitors are sort of left wanting more, or where the FAQ is quite a visited section. Having that interactive experience is a really powerful experience, is really a powerful tool for the business, and extremely useful for the user going there, so they can actually understand it. But they can also, it's learning about the business, it's answering their question, but it's also getting to know the team and the people behind the company. And I think that's what really sets it apart from the sort of standard chat bases or intercoms or other chatbots you find on most websites.
And so now that we have a sense of Sensei, I want to zoom out a bit and talk about the broader landscape that you're operating in. So, AI and knowledge management are rapidly evolving. So, from your vantage point, what macro trends do you see shaping the future of this space over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think AI is changing pretty much every industry, right? So it's obviously a big catalyst for lots of people to rethink how they work. And you're right, one of those is knowledge management, how people, especially organizations, manage their knowledge day to day, because the two scarce resources that any company have are capital and knowledge, essentially people. So it's capital and people, which boils down to knowledge. And especially when you start looking at large companies, like big telecom companies, big manufacturing companies, even governments, one of the biggest issues that they are currently facing is a huge brain drain and knowledge loss from baby boomers retiring and from people leaving and churning. And then the younger generation coming through are not really sticking it out in the same way that the previous generations did. So on the one hand, you've got people who've been in positions for 10, 20, 30, 40 years sometimes, who are now leaving these companies with all that knowledge from all that history, all the systems, all the projects, the clients, the customers. And then you've got these new generation coming in with, in ill-equipped tools to be able to train them properly, and then they leave anyway. So there's an instant knowledge churn. So even if they were trained on that previous person's knowledge, then after a very short amount of time, it's lost again anyway. So, we're personally, from our company alone, we're looking into a solution of using our technology to help solve this. So we're actually researching the ways that our technology could actually be used to capture that knowledge, to capture that tacit knowledge and industrial understanding and knowledge, and how that can then be turned into a interactive chatbot going forward, so that that knowledge isn't lost when they move on.
So for you guys, it could be even an internal resource, not just for, say, using as a chatbot on a website. It could be within their internal organization, taking knowledge from individuals who are within the business, keep that within their business, and then be able to use it with future employees. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
so yeah, exactly. So the idea would be to have that as a continuous knowledge base, an interactive knowledge base, so that resource isn't lost. It'll be available to the company as a whole, or to the individual team members who are there, as a part of that team. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be in their style or their voice or their image. Even it just has, as long as some of that know-how, that tacit knowledge, that the systemic knowledge of how they do their jobs and their thought process is actually captured, it becomes a really, powerful tool to be able to capture, a lot of that information and have that available, because, it's not in their documents. It won't be in their emails. It won't be in their Slack messages. It won't be in their sort of day-to-day operations, because it's, especially an older generation, most of this technology is still new. So most of their knowledge will be, in their heads. And AI is definitely an advancement on how you can actually capture and take and get that knowledge out of their heads and into a system that can then also be useful for a generation that is brought up using technology, and so forth, and going forward, by making it that sort of evolving knowledge base in a way that no other previous technology could do, even if you tried.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the market for AI powered tools is becoming increasingly crowded. So what do you believe truly sets Sensei apart from others building in this arena? I know that earlier you mentioned a little bit about the personalization aspect of it, but what are other aspects of it that really set you guys apart?
Yeah, definitely the personalization. I think that there's plenty of AI tools out there that are very clever, but they do have a generic aspect to them. Even the Chat GPTs of the world are extremely powerful and useful, but when it comes to some of the more personal elements, if you were to ask ChatGPT, like, can you recommend 5 Mexican restaurants near me? I'm sure it would. I'm sure it would give you some really great results, but it wouldn't know that you prefer taco trucks on the corner, or you prefer a high-end Mexican restaurant. And that's where the personalization of the AI becomes really, really important. So yeah, that would be the main differentiator. Aside from that, you're right. It's a very crowded space, and I think that there is a difficult distinction to make between people who say they use AI and the real AI builders, because obviously there's a lot of people throwing AI onto their products and businesses now and saying that they're using it, but in reality they're using ChatGPT to send some messages or something. And also, I mean, with those that famous, that really public case recently with Builder AI, where it got found out that actually their AI wasn't AI at all. It was a team of Indians doing the work. And so there's going to be a lot of cases of that, people who really use AI, people who just say they use AI. And within that, there's also going to be a huge amount of new businesses, but there's also going to be the same sort of failure rate. So as typical businesses, it was just going to be happening a lot faster. So AI enables people to build faster, create faster, learn faster, but at the same time, the statistics on failure rates probably won't change. So the vast majority of businesses will fail. The ones that do survive will survive partly because of either being first or being best, or most of the time just by being lucky. It could be the right product at the wrong time, and that could cause a failure. Whereas something that comes around just happens to be at the right time could be what makes success. And those traditional metrics in business won't really change. So I think that there's, how do we stay competitive? How do we stay, relevant and different? We build different. We have our vision and what we're doing. We are very cautious with our costing and our fundraising and our future investment, but also how we build a team, how we build a quality team, and the partners and people we work with, and sticking to a vision that we think will be truly valuable. So for a project like ours, where we have this big dream of building something that has never existed before, there's going to be a huge amount of difficulty along the way. We're recreating humans as AI technology. And so there's a lot that we need to do. There's a lot of challenges that we're going to face in doing that, and a lot of unknowns that we will have to face as a team. It's exciting, it's big, but we are building in the same way as people who are building to colonize Mars. These are, long-term projects that will see, significant value in the future, but just for now it's still it's still a tough process to communicate that and get that across, and to actually say, in an age where we've never had to use an AI clone of ourselves for anything, how can you then communicate that that is going to be something that you really want in the future? And so there are some common sense business practices we have to put in place as we go, like the stepping stones to get there through these chatbots, this knowledge transfer and so forth as we build. But no, we've got a fantastic team. We're building real value in personalization, other standard business operations like quality pricing, great positioning and great marketing. And, we just work to just give customers real value in what we build.
So that leads well into my next question. Have you faced skepticism about AI replicas in terms of trust or authenticity? And how do you balance the technological capabilities just with that emotional or, ethical considerations from users?
Yeah, I mean, we could be here for 2 hours talking about ethics on this. Obviously, it's an entire philosophical field around this concept, and so there are obviously concerns from a lot of people around everything from privacy to security to how will that actually impact my identity going forward. So yes, there are skeptics, as there will be with any new technology. There are concerns and there are questions. A lot to do with how do you build it, where does the information come from, where is it stored, and where will it be presented. And so we build with these questions in mind, and we build with solutions in mind that do protect the user's identity and privacy, and their data. But the real, I guess, push past that is when they see it in action. So when I talk about creating a replica of yourself and what would I even use it for? And then I go on to say, oh well, I haven't looked at my Twitter in 2 or 3 months. It's been fully managed by my replica. Or I say that out of the God knows how many 200 emails I get every day, I have pre-drafted responses to all of them in my voice, in my style, because my replica is plugged into my emails to help me answer that. Our HR manager, his replica interviewed 50,000 candidates last month and then filtered them down to, a finalist few. So having these replicas as extensions of ourselves, when people hear about how useful they can be and how powerful they can be and how much time they save you and how much value they can give you, suddenly the conversation isn't so much around the privacy concerns and everything else. It's how do I get one of these? How do I start? Where do I start? How long does it take? And how much does it cost?
Yep, that makes sense to show them the real value of what they get from it. So let's pivot a bit to how you're driving awareness and adoption. So I know that I saw you raise funding through a token sale rather than traditional VC. How has this shaped your go to market strategy and ability to stay lean and fast moving?
Quite well. I would say that obviously going through an unconventional way of fundraising after I bootstrapped the company for the first 9 months myself. And then we did a crypto token sale, which ended up raising about $3.4 million. And I guess that helped. I mean, if anything, it doesn't help you stay lean because you have, suddenly a good amount of capital to play with, and that can lead to distractions and you know I guess differences of opinions when it comes to what to build and for who. But it also gives you that freedom and flexibility. With There was no VCs directly demanding an immediate return. There's no one sat there telling you what you should be building. It was fully about the team and the team's decision to build it in the way that we wanted to build it. So we have that vision, we have that path, and we have the freedom and flexibility to make some of the early mistakes without having that held against us and being held too accountable to someone else, with strict restrictions on what we can and can't do. So in a lot of ways, it was amazing for us to do it that way. I think it can also be limiting in terms of you don't have that typical support. You are going down a different route, and so there isn't a conventional model to follow. And I think that's a typical of everything we do. There's no conventional typical model that we follow. So it's also an interesting way because, there's also a lot of fear, not just around AI, but also around crypto and Web3. So when we talk about, saying we fundraised through a crypto token sale, there are people out there who do automatically put us in a box as a crypto project. And that's simply just not the case. We are predominantly a Web2 AI project that has a Web3 element to it, but for the technology more than the actual crypto. The reason for doing the crypto token sale had legitimate technological reasons for the future and how that will play into the technology that we're building. But it does, scare some people off, and so we do our best to position ourselves to share that out there. But the also nice thing about the crypto side is the community you get from a crypto community. So by being partially Web3 project, you do open yourself up to that international Web3 community who do want to get involved and see you succeed. So we're very grateful to our community that we have built, and the way that actually helps us to leverage our marketing and our business development to reach more people globally and actually have a stronger interaction with them when we do.
So, what's been the most effective channel or growth tactic so far?
I think we've got something like 50,000 replicas created. We've got, I think, registered users over 200,000 registered users. Uh, then monthly active users probably around the 20,000 mark at this point. The main contributing factor to that I guess, is a mixture across the team. So it's been 2 years of building, experimenting. Web3 community helps as well, but then genuine Web2 marketing, putting out adverts and talk to people, getting involved in communities. We've run some great PR campaigns and awareness. So, the marketing goes a long way. Partly, we've got a great social team who put a lot of effort into what we do and how we do it. We've got a great support network from the community who are always active and happy to support promoting us. And then, from PR and just getting involved with, all of the different platforms that we can promote ourselves on, everything from Product Hunt to TripAdvisor to pretty much, not TripAdvisor, sorry, Trustpilot. I've traveled too much. Trustpilot, and just applying ourselves and pushing ourselves as hard as we can to raise the awareness, because we really believe that we are building something incredible for the future, and we want to talk about it, we want to share it, and we think that people will enjoy what we're building as well.
And have there been any channels or growth strategies that haven't worked as well as you hoped?
Many, 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 but I think I forget about them as soon as we can. We move on. I think again, that whole idea about pushing and taking risks and trying things and seeing what goes out there from both a PR, a different channel, different sort of brand messaging, definitely has changed a lot. And even just the company as a whole, a few pivots towards different target markets and understanding how we approach them has definitely happened a lot over the 2 years. And that's that I think that's both normal in a lot of companies, but I think especially in AI with the Web3 element, things do move a lot faster. But you also have the um, very quick response time and ability to pivot fast as well, and try different things out. So when we are creating something that is so new, and no one's really been involved with it before, no one's tried to do anything like this before, there definitely is an element of like misunderstanding, and so we have to essentially adapt and update our brand messaging continuously to really find the fit to be able to explain it. We find ourselves on calls and podcasts able to sort of go through the big picture, but how does that essentially condense down into social posts or adverts or to someone arriving at your website where they get it straight away? When we're building something that's brand new that no one's seen before, how do you then communicate that in a way that most people will understand? And so that's still a learning progress and process. I wouldn't say that we're even there yet. So the failures are plentiful and are still there day to day, but we do learn, we adapt, and we just constantly try new things. And so some things work well and some things do fall flat on their face.
And when it comes to positioning Sensei in the market, who would you say is your ideal user today versus who you think it might be, say, a year from now?
So obviously we've got this product right now, which is around these chatbots and widgets. So we look at SMEs and individual entrepreneurs, everything from business coaching to manufacturing to retail to even governance. So we look at these different SMEs and sometimes large companies as well, who a chatbot and sales tool could be really useful for their teams, both in terms of driving revenue and helping with customer support. So anyone who's got a website that wants to give it a bit more interactive, wants to put a bit more of themselves into it, instead of having a beautifully designed website, what about an interactive website where your customers and clients and visitors can get to know you as a team? So right now it's targeted towards the small companies. In the next couple of years, I think we'll see that transition into much larger companies, organizations, and even governments. A lot around that idea of knowledge capture and transfer, a lot around the idea of, enabling that tacit knowledge to be kept inside the company and preserved and made useful to the company going forward. And I think out the back of what we're doing, we'll see quite a few new products that we build and features that may take off more than others. And we've got loads of incredible stuff that we've already built and will continue to build. These incredible features that all by themselves probably could be their own businesses. If we take the email drafting alone, where my replica can go and create email drafts, in my style, in my voice. It's so any email that comes in, I can have it pre-drafted for me, so that out of the 200 emails that I get a day, it takes me minutes instead of hours to get through them. And that in itself could be its own business. But what we're really focusing on is this holistic approach to how a virtual you can help you at pretty much everything you do. And so that's what we want to continue building towards. And so I guess in a couple of years, we'll probably be more established with large enterprises and organizations and governments with how we capture and transfer knowledge between teams. But all of this is still stepping stones towards creating these autonomous virtual humans.
So, I want to go a bit deeper here and explore what's been hard or what's kept you up at night. So, what have been the most frustrating or persistent challenges in building Sensei?
It's a great question. I think again the biggest one is focus, because of the type of technology is new. So there's no roadmap to follow. There's no path. There's no competitor to emulate. There's no one to really look at and say, this is how they did it. Maybe we can do something similar, or, learn from them so that we do things differently. That would be the most consistent problem, I would guess. But along the way, I think we face the same as a lot of other companies. There's times where, capital is scarce, and times where, hiring and firing is a challenge, and it impacts the team. I think that then there's communication issues, like any team, and then just customer research and understanding pain points. That is also one of those things that a lot of companies get very wrong. They market to the wrong type of customers because they haven't really talked to the customers and identified the proper target market and really nailed into that into that niche. And we are as guilty as most at having those problems in the past, and will continue to have some of those problems going forward. So for us, though, the focus issue is tough. We call it shiny object syndrome, where we get distracted by a new fancy idea or feature or target market, or concept that we want to throw out there and get out there because we think it's the best idea. And we're getting better at dealing with that. But it's there's a very fine line between experimentation and testing and running completely amok with a completely new idea and like essentially new concept for your business. So we're getting better at dealing with that. I wouldn't say it's completely weeded out. I'm as guilty as anyone else for that myself, but it's definitely it's been one of the biggest challenges, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs face that challenge, and a lot of team leaders face that challenge because there's always the if things take longer than you expect, there's always the calls from people around you to say, you should pivot, you should change what you're doing, you should just give up or do something else. And it takes a lot of, I guess, inner strength to sort of stay on course and believe in your vision and believe that you're doing things in the right way, or equal amount of strength to make that decision and say, no, what we have to actually pivot, we have to do something different. So, I guess that's some of the biggest challenges that most companies have to face. I don't think that's unique to us at all, but it's definitely one of the ones that we've struggled through in the 2 years we've been building this.
That kind of leads into a follow up that I have is just as a founder, obviously, emotionally, it can be challenging, right? And how have you dealt with just staying on this path and not questioning this direction or this grand, goal that you have of what you're building with Sensei? How do you navigate that?
Personally, I couldn't really imagine working on anything else. Now that I've started this, I think that the idea of building a form of digital immortality, something that I wrote about, something that I, almost studied, it's something that I find so important in our life, in our existence as a civilization to work towards. So one way or another, I believe that I would always continue to work towards this. I really can't imagine that I would stray from that, whether that ends up being because of this company or another. But obviously, with a company, there's responsibility. There's responsibility to your team, to your co-founders, to your friends and employees and customers to make it work. So there are difficulties in terms of the highs and the lows, and there are struggles with that personally, and the weight of it is you know crushing sometimes. I think that there's a lot of people out there who encourage people to be entrepreneurs and they encourage them to start their own business. The a lot of people just aren't necessarily made for it. There's just a lot of weight that goes around with a lot of stress, a lot of things that people don't really understand. Even sometimes co-founders, there's usually one person who might be the one who's in charge of taking on the responsibility, taking on the pressure, the weight, the risk of it all. And not even co-founders sometimes understand that. Sometimes they're a hobby, almost like a hobby co-founder. So for me, I actually fall back on my philosophy. Ironically, I definitely fall back on some of the philosophical way of thinking about life and where we are and who we are, and between my philosophy and travel and seeing the world and getting a chance to continue living my life. I find a bit of peace and solace in that, but there's definitely heavier days than others, and I guess I deal with it in the same way as most entrepreneurs and business leaders have to, in the way that you find your way to sort of take a step back and really look at the problem, identify what's really the cause of the problem, and then start working on a solution. So on the one hand, it is heavy, but on the other hand, I'm a very solutions orientated person. I really enjoy big problems, and so all of these problems are things that are problems that have solutions. And so it's just about figuring out what that solution is and how we achieve it.
And when you look ahead now at the next 12 months, what are the top three goals that you're focused on achieving with Sensei? And what would success look like by this time next year for you?
Great question. I mean, when I look back a year, we've come a long way. I wouldn't even know how to think like where we'll be in a year's time. Next sort of 12 months goals, we want to validate this concept around knowledge transfer and see that put into place. We'll be doing a fundraising round later this year. So probably launching around in October and closing that. So I guess the validation of that concept, fundraise, and then I guess opening up one or two new markets would be fantastic. I think we've got a fantastic team. We've got really great technology, and we are shipping faster every day. And so for me, success is just continuing on this trajectory, still enjoying what we're doing and still building towards that goal, and still having that clear path towards that. I think if that sort of falters and we lose that vision and we lose that clarity, I think that's where that would, for me, be a lack of success. But otherwise, if we can achieve the fundraise, if we can achieve the right partners to join us on this path, then that will be the right step forward and along that path. And that for me is just continued success, because that's moving in the right direction. It's going to be a long build. It's not just a next 12 months. It may not even be the next 10 years, but this is something that, is important for the company, us as founders, as a civilization. I really want to be a part of that and actually help it to get it, help us to achieve that.
And so I always like to end with an advice question. So, what advice would you give to other founders trying to make bold bets in emerging markets like AI?
It's a challenging question. It's a great one. Advice for anyone trying to make a bold bet in an emerging market. The obvious one is just do it, just try it, just find people who will support you. It's understanding and thinking about what you want out of it, and also understanding, I guess, the the finance side of things, to make sure that you are planning for the future, both in terms of, is this going to be sustainable for yourself, and because it could be the best idea, the craziest idea, but if it can't sustain yourself, and then may not really be worth doing, unless it's for other reasons. But the honest, easy advice to that is to just get started, to try it out, put it out there. Even in a technology, in a space like AI, where there seems to be every idea under the sun emerging, and every other idea just waiting to, be taken over by the big companies, the ChatGPTs, and OpenAI. It's still an opportunity to get involved. It's still an opportunity to try and not be worried about starting and pushing forward. And with that vision about what you want to do, those big bold ideas, you will attract the right people around you. And the rest comes down to what we talked about earlier, which is, are you the first? Are you the best? Or are you just lucky enough to have the right timing and actually make it work?
Yep, that's great advice. And for those who want to learn more about Sensei or connect with you, where's the best place?
Yeah. So you can find Sensei at sensei.io, or on any social channel at Ask Sensei. That's Sensay. And myself, you can find me at Sensei Dan. That's Sensaydan. Feel free to ask me anything anywhere, and I promise, if my AI doesn't get back to you with a good enough answer, I will.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into Mo's Market Pulse. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a comment, and join us again to hear more insights from leaders coming up on future episodes. And thank you, Dan, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.